The Washington Post recently did a big report on this, and since 2005, more than 2,000 newspapers in the United States have closed. 25% of all print newspapers in the United States are now no longer around.
A lot has happened in the ensuing, 40 years. Newsroom budgets became tighter, and number of people you have at your disposal became fewer, to the point where now the home community for a newspaper, very often, if there is a newspaper, has a hard time covering that primary community, let alone the ones that surround it.
But I don't think that people necessarily connect. If I don't buy a subscription to my paper, that the paper may suffer. And I think the industry really, unfortunately, did this to itself early on by providing content at no cost, because there's a real cost to producing the content.
So one of the saddest things, I think, and it's just undeniable, is I'd say it is about 20 years. You've just seen a decline for daily newspapers primarily, but weekly newspapers, radio stations, to cover local government, county government, local crime, any of that sort of the nuts and bolts of community journalism, they're just not covering it the way they used to, and it's financial. When the news moved to the internet, they probably should have started charging for that right away. They did not. And now everybody thinks news on the internet should be for free.
I have seen some of the changes, as you mentioned, those shrinking newsrooms, more being asked of reporters and editors in terms of not just turning in a good story, but having to do a story and a podcast and social media and all the different forms of media that compete for people's attentions these days.
You definitely see the impact of the lack of people subscribing. All these newsrooms are doing their best. They're doing great work, but they are incredibly understaffed. And the journalists who go into the workforce, wanting to do that coverage, wanting to make a difference, burn out so quickly because the hours and the work is so demanding, because the newsrooms either can't or don't want to pay to have enough people in the staff room.
This isn't just a sob story for the newspapers. This is a sob story for the community, because the community finds itself very often less and less engaged with its own affairs. And as a result, I think there's this general sense of not disinterest, but just, I think an apathy sets in where people they shrug and say, there's nothing we can do about it. And it starts with not knowing what's going on.
The more consolidated and less localized papers are, the less quality coverage there is, and the residents suffer because of that. I think you need people who are in the community consistently to do quality reporting on it and to know what's going on and be able to write it in a way that their audience will understand and that they're intimate with their audience.
The role of the media plays a vital role in democracy in bringing transparency to our processes, to ask questions where other folks might not. And so if you don't have somebody reporting on the issues, a lot of stuff can just fly under the radar. We don't have very high attendance at our public meetings, even though all the council meetings are public. And if that's not in the media, they might not find out about any changes until it actually hits them directly, if it does.
We have to always maintain public access to government, because there are people that we elect and who are appointed who govern us. We can't just sit back and, accept the consequences of that. We have to be active participants in it. And I think as journalists we do that. I'm not sure as a general public people are so inclined. So journalists kind of do the heavy lifting for people, and we're happy to do it.
Our founding fathers, one reason why freedom of the press is in the First Amendment, we're here at the First Amendment Museum, is because Thomas Jefferson wrote that informed citizenry is the key to a successful democracy. And you just worry if it's not happening at the local level like that, how healthy we really are.